Welcome back to the ground cinnamon. Today we'll make a biryani and we'll make the real stuff. So there's going to be dum and all of that. Now I recognize this biryani as the Frazer Town biryani because whenever I go to Frazer Town, I have this biryani. But otherwise, a lot of Bangaloreans would recognize this as the biryani made at every single wedding. Regardless of what, whose, which wedding, this biryani is a prerequisite. The flavors are very mild, they're very subtle. The flavors also very layered. The chicken in it, generally you'll also get mutton or beef biryani, amazing. The chicken otherwise in it is very juicy, very tender. The rice is, again, it has this lovely glaze on it. You guys are gonna love it, and let's get straight into it. When it comes to making a biryani, the first thing you want to get out of your way is the rice. We want to parcook it. That is, you want to cook it about 70 to 75%. Here I have 1.5 cups of Basmati rice, which has been rinsed. It has been rinsed to get rid of the excess odor and the surface starch, and it has also been soaking for about 20 minutes. Into this pot, I've added 2 liters of water, and before I forget, I am going to heavily salt it with about 2 tablespoons of salt. It's almost like making pasta, where your liquid is almost 8 times of your starch. And also, if your liquid tastes like nothing, so will your biryani. Which is why you want to add enough flavor into this liquid, because it is only at this stage that the rice gets any aroma or flavor. Which is why I'm going to go in with some classic biryani spices, that is some bayleaf, black cardamom, green cardamom, star anise, cinnamon, and also some caraway seeds. Now you want this liquid to come to a roaring boil, after which you want these spices to infuse for at least 5 minutes before you add the rice. In the meantime, I'm going to do some prep for the other layers. You're going to need 3 onions, and you want these onions sliced. Half of these onions are going to go into the gravy, and the other half is to make some fried onions. You don't have a good biryani without fried onions. Along with this, you want an inch of ginger and a handful of garlic. Both of these you want it chopped, and yes, you could use ginger garlic paste. It is more convenient, but I just prefer the fresh stuff. So the liquid has been roaring for a bit, and before you add your rice, you want to drain it completely, like that, and in it goes. Now once the rice goes into the liquid, do not leave the liquid roaring for too much. If not, your grain might break. So you want this rice cooking for about 7 to 8 minutes. And you know when it's par-cooked, when you take a bite of one of those grains, where it's edible, but it's not really satisfactory. And when you break it, you will see a portion of the grain still undercooked. Do you see the undercooked part? There? No? Anyway, I'm going to drain this rice from this liquid, and I'm going to start working on the next ingredient, which is the fried onions. So into this pan, I'm going to add 1 cup of vegetable oil, and I'm going to get this quite hot, significantly hot. Once it comes to temperature, I'm going to add 1/2 of the onions we sliced. Now making these onions is extremely tricky because there's a very fine line between awesome and disaster. So keep an eye on those onions, and here is the drained rice. You want to cool this off completely. So you want to place this in a plate as wide as possible. Do not place it in a bowl, because what's going to happen is the top is going to cool off while the inside continues to steam. And the whole purpose of par-cooking it to 70%, 80% is completely lost. It will go to 100%. And this reminds me, time to clear misconception number 1. You do not need Basmati rice to make biryani. I'm using Basmati rice only because it photographs well. Otherwise, most biryanis in the Deccan, except Hyderabadi of course, do not use Basmati rice. Be it Amber Biryani, Talisheri Biryani, Dindigul Biryani, there's also Kozhikode, there's also Bhatkali Biryani. All of these use jeera rice or some sort of a short grain rice. So don't sweat it, use whatever rice you have. Now, the one skill you want to know while making fried onions is to know when to pull it out. So a light golden color is great, and that is because once pulled out, they will continue to cook and they will darken out further. If you leave this in the oil for any further, you will have the most bitter onions. Now drain them on to a tissue paper, and once drained, do not forget to season them. There is no point of fried onions unless they are well seasoned with some salt. Essentially 2 layers of a biryani are done, and now we have to work on the gravy. For this, along with the onions, I have 200 ml of tomato puree. This is store-bought tomato puree for convenience. You could also use 2 small tomatoes with half a cup of yogurt. Now I'm going to make 2 sets of spices, whole and powdered. For the whole spices, I want 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 bay leaf, 2 inches of cinnamon, a star anise, 3 cloves, and 2 pods of cardamom. Remember to puncture your cardamom. In the second set, the powdered set, I have 1 teaspoon of coriander, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of turmeric. Now before we make our gravy, what we have to do is brown our chicken. This is 500 grams of chicken. First I'm going to dab it dry. Remember, when you want to brown your chicken, dab your chicken dry. If not, you'll end up boiling it instead of frying it. And season the chicken generously on both sides with salt and pepper. Now in 2 tablespoons of oil, brown it, and brown it beautifully, just like that. Now keep the brown chicken aside, after which in the very same oil you want to go in with your whole spices. Fry the whole spices for about 15 to 20 seconds before you add your ginger and the onions. At this point we're going to have to wait, and we're going to wait for these onions to completely brown. In the meantime, here I have some coriander, and I'm here going to use the coriander stalks. Remember, the stalks have maximum flavor. We're going to use the leaves later. We're going to use them to layer, but these stalks, we want to chop them real fine and add them along with your garlic only when the onions have completely browned off. So the onions are browned off, and in go the garlic and the coriander stalks. Give it a quick toss, after which you want to immediately add your powdered spices. Now to toast off these powdered spices, you'll need about 15 to 20 seconds. And once you've toasted it off, you want to go in with your tomato puree. Now the tomato puree, you want to completely cook it off. You want to get rid of that rawness, and that is going to take anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. And that brings us to misconception number 2. Now a lot of people believe that tomatoes in a biryani is incorrect, that it is blasphemy. Now it is true that under the Mughal or the Deccan Sultanate, tomatoes weren't used, and that is because tomatoes didn't exist in India. They came only in the 18th century with the Portuguese. Now traditionally biryanis would use yogurt to give the body of this gravy. But if you see, yogurt and tomatoes do the same job. That is to provide some degree of sourness and the body to the gravy. A lot of biryanis in the south have adapted. We use a lot of tomatoes, and the ones who don't, it's time to adapt. Lastly, we have the yogurt and the chicken, and when you want to add yogurt to something really hot like this, you want to temper it. So first I'm going to give it a quick whisk, after which I'm going to take a portion of this gravy and add it to the yogurt and bring it to temperature so that when it's added to the gravy, it doesn't split. Firstly, I'm going to add the chicken followed by the tempered yogurt, and now we're going to cook all of this together until the chicken has completely cooked off. So before I add my lid, I'm going to season it with some salt and pepper. While this cooks off, I'm going to chop up some coriander leaves. These coriander leaves are going to be layered in the biryani along with our fried onions. An option you have is to layer some mint leaves alongside. The gravy is completely done, and in this large pot I am going to layer my biryani. I'm going to make 3 layers of rice and 2 layers of meat, and for the sake of convenience I have unequally divided my rice into 3, 2 small and 1 big. For the first layer, a small portion of rice, spread it around the bottom equally, after which add paste, traditionally you would seal this with some dough. A better option is to use a heavy Dutch oven. An easy option is using aluminum foil like I have. Place the lid over the aluminum foil and in 12 minutes we will have some amazing biryani. Now it is this layering process that makes a biryani a biryani. The difference between a biryani and a pilaf. So in a biryani, your rice is par-cooked, you're with a lot of flavor, your chicken is par-cooked, and they retain their own identity. So it's only under the dum process that there's a sort of a unifying flavor that goes through, but every layer retains its own individuality, its own flavor, and that is what makes a biryani so interesting and so much fun to eat. It has been 12 minutes and there's been a solid dum process based on how much pressure you can see on that aluminum foil. And moment of truth, and that's awesome. This brings us to myth number 3, and that is biryanis are difficult to make. As you have seen, it's really easy and you have control over every single element. The odds of a biryani going sideways is pretty much zero. Now, one sign of a great biryani is it has 3 colors. Exhibit A. Now, I'd like to show you a little secret, and that is if you dig a little deep in your biryani, right at the bottom you will see bits of this caramelized rice, and gosh, this is so good to eat. And there we have it. You can call it a Frazer Town biryani, you can call it the Bangalore biryani. I've spoken a lot about biryani, and I'd just like to put out there what is my favorite kind of biryani. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this biryani, but everybody has their favorite. So there is Lucknowi, there's Calcutta, there is Hyderabad, there is airport style biryani, Dindigul biryani, Kozhikode biryani. My favorite kind of biryani is the Talasheri biryani. Let me know what's your favorite in the comment section, and if you've liked what I've done and what I've been doing, do like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.